Mom, he tricked you. Noah's trembling voice pierced the quiet hum of the car as Aisha gripped the wheel, her heart lurching. Her 8-year-old son's wide eyes, brimming with fear and urgency, locked onto hers under the dim glow of the dashboard. They were en route to a corporate gala, a night meant to celebrate her husband David's triumph, but Noah's words unraveled everything. Aisha, a radiant architect whose world revolved around family, was about to uncover a chilling betrayal that would shatter her trust and reshape her life. This story of courage and revelation will grip you until the final moment. I'm thrilled to share it with you. Hit that subscribe button and let me know where you're tuning in from and when. Stick around. The truth Aisha discovers will leave you speechless. The Atlanta skyline shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Aisha's downtown office, a mosaic of steel and glass reflecting her own carefully constructed life. At 28, Aisha Williams was a force, a black architect whose radiant, sun-kissed skin and cascading wavy hair turned heads as often as her designs did. Her desk, cluttered with sketches of bold, eco-friendly buildings, spoke of a mind that never rested. But her heart, that belonged to her family, her 8-year-old son Noah, with his sharp wit and soulful eyes, and her husband David, the man she'd vowed to build a future with. As she traced the lines of her latest blueprint, her thoughts drifted to those early days with David. Nights filled with laughter, shared dreams, and promises whispered under starlit skies. Back then, love felt like a foundation strong enough to hold forever. But forever, Aisha was learning, had cracks. David had changed. The man who once hung on her every word, who'd bring her coffee just to steal a moment together, was now a shadow in their home. His tech startup, once a scrappy dream they'd nurtured together, had exploded into success, and with it, David had drifted. Late nights at the office became the norm, his phone buzzing with calls he'd taken hushed tones behind closed doors. Aisha would catch him pacing in their sleek, modern kitchen, his voice low, his eyes darting as if guarding a secret. When she asked about his work, his answers were clipped, his smile strained. "Just stress, babe," he'd say, brushing her off with a kiss that felt more like habit than heart. She told herself it was the pressure of success, the weight of running a company. But doubt, like a weed, had begun to creep into her mind. Noah noticed it too. Her bright, sensitive boy, who could read a room better than most adults, had started watching his father with a quiet intensity. At dinner, when David's phone would light up and he'd excuse himself, Noah's fork would pause, his small brow furrowing. Aisha would reach for his hand, her fingers wrapping around his, trying to shield him from the tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud. "Everything okay, buddy?" she'd ask, her voice warm but searching. Noah would nod, but his eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, told her he felt the shift too. He'd curl up closer to her on the couch later, his head against her shoulder, as if anchoring himself to the one constant he trusted. The signs were subtle at first, like hairline fractures in a structure no one bothers to inspect. Aisha found receipts in David's jacket for dinners she hadn't attended, restaurants too upscale for a casual business meeting. His laptop, once left open with shared files of their dreams, was now password protected. One night she overheard him on the phone, his voice sharp and secretive. "No, she doesn't suspect anything. Just keep it quiet." Aisha froze in the hallway, her bare feet cold against the hardwood, her heart pounding. When she asked who he was talking to, David's face tightened, his eyes flashing with irritation. "A client, Aisha. You don't need to interrogate me." The words stung, not just for their edge, but for the distance they revealed. She swallowed her unease, convincing herself she was overreacting. Love, she reasoned, meant trust. But trust was a fragile thing. The invitation came on a crisp autumn evening, delivered with a smile that didn't reach David's eyes. He stood in their living room, his tailored suit impeccable, his blonde hair catching the light as he handed her a sleek, embossed card. "It's the company gala," he said, his voice smooth but rehearsed. "A big night for us. I'm announcing the new project, the one you helped design the plans for. I need you there, Aisha, to show everyone we're a team." His words were warm, but something about them felt off, like a blueprint drawn just slightly out of scale. Aisha's fingers traced the card's edges, her mind racing. This was her chance to bridge the gap between them, to reclaim the partnership they'd lost. "Of course," she said, forcing a smile. "Noah and I will be there." David's expression flickered, something unreadable passing over his face. "Great," he said, his tone too quick. "But, you two should take the car. I've got some things to handle beforehand, so I'll meet you there." Aisha's stomach twisted, a faint alarm bell ringing in her mind. Why separate cars? Why the rush in his voice? She pushed the thoughts aside, chalking it up to her imagination. Noah, playing with his toy cars on the rug, looked up at his father, his small hands pausing. Aisha caught his gaze, and for a moment they shared a silent question neither could voice. As the gala approached, Aisha threw herself into preparations, hoping the night would mend what was breaking. She picked out a stunning emerald dress that hugged her curves, its fabric shimmering like her resolve to hold her family together. For Noah, she chose a tiny navy suit, his favorite color, and smiled as he spun in front of the mirror, grinning like the boy he still was. But even as she planned, the unease grew. David's late-night calls increased, his excuses vaguer. One evening she found him in his study, hunched over his phone, whispering urgently. When she entered, he startled, slamming the phone down. "Work," he muttered, avoiding her eyes. Aisha's chest tightened, but she said nothing, her silence a shield against the truth she wasn't ready to face. The night before the gala, Noah climbed into her bed, his small body curling against hers. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Is Dad okay?" Aisha's heart ached at the worry in his tone. She stroked his hair, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "He's just busy, sweetheart. Everything's fine." But as she held him, Noah's quiet breathing a comfort in the dark, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something bigger than stress or distance. The gala loomed like a test, one she wasn't sure she was prepared for. David's words echoed in her mind. "Show everyone we're a team." But teams don't keep secrets. Teams don't drift apart. As Aisha lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the cracks in her perfect life deepened. She didn't know it yet, but the truth was waiting, just beyond the horizon, in the trembling voice of her son and the shadows of a plan she couldn't yet see. The gala would be more than a celebration. It would be the moment everything changed. The hum of the car's engine was a steady pulse against the Atlanta night, streetlights casting fleeting shadows across Aisha's face as she navigated the winding roads toward the gala. Her emerald dress shimmered faintly under the dashboard's glow, a stark contrast to the knot of unease tightening in her chest. Beside her, Noah sat in his navy suit, the crisp collar slightly askew from his restless fidgeting. His small hands toyed with the seatbelt, twisting it into knots, his gaze fixed out the window as if searching for answers in the blur of passing lights. Aisha stole a glance at him, her heart softening at the sight of her son. So young, yet carrying a weight she couldn't quite name. "You okay, buddy?" she asked, her voice a gentle anchor in the quiet. Noah didn't answer right away. His fingers stilled, and he shifted in his seat, his sneakers scuffing against the floor mat. Aisha's brow furrowed. Noah was never this quiet, not her bright, curious boy who could talk for hours about constellations or comic book heroes. The silence felt heavy, charged with something unspoken. She reached over, resting a hand on his knee. "Noah, what's going on? You're awfully quiet tonight." He turned to her then, his brown eyes wide and shimmering with a fear that stopped her breath. "Mom," he whispered, his voice so soft it barely reached her over the engine's hum. "Can I tell you something?" Aisha's grip tightened on the wheel, her pulse quickening. She nodded, forcing a calm smile. "Of course, sweetheart. You can tell me anything." Noah hesitated, glancing out the window again as if checking for unseen listeners. Then, in a voice trembling with the weight of what he carried, he said, "Mom, he tricked you. It's a trap." The words hit like a thunderclap. Aisha's foot eased off the gas, the car slowing as her mind reeled. She pulled onto the shoulder, the tires crunching against gravel, and turned to face her son. "Noah, what are you talking about?" Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded, a drumbeat of dread. Noah's face crumpled, a mix of fear and guilt, as if he'd betrayed some sacred trust by speaking. "Dad," he said, his voice breaking. "I heard him, on the phone, with some lady named Azura Lockwood. They're planning something bad for tonight." Aisha's world tilted. The air in the car felt too thick, too warm. She stared at Noah, searching his face for some sign he'd misunderstood, that this was just a child's imagination running wild. But his eyes, those eyes that always saw too much, held a raw, unyielding truth. "What did you hear, Noah?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter them both. Noah swallowed, his small hands clenching into fists. "I was in the hallway last night, getting water. Dad was in his study, talking on the phone. He didn't know I was there." His words came faster now, tumbling out like a dam breaking. "He was talking to this Azura Lockwood lady. He said something about fake documents and making it look like you messed up the project. He said, he said it would ruin you, Mom, that everyone would think you're the one who made mistakes, and he'd get to keep everything." Isha's breath caught, a sharp pain slicing through her chest. The project, her project, the architectural plans she'd poured her soul into for David's company, was the cornerstone of his gala announcement. She'd spent months refining every detail, her designs the backbone of his success. And now Noah's words painted a picture so vile she could hardly grasp it. David, her husband, plotting to frame her, to destroy her reputation and claim the glory for himself. Her hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, anchoring herself against the storm of betrayal, threatening to pull her under. "Noah," she said, her voice shaking despite her effort to stay calm. "Are you sure? Tell me exactly what you heard." Noah nodded, his lip quivering. He said, "Aisha won't see it coming. The investors will turn on her, and I'll take control." He laughed, Mom, like it was a game. The image of David laughing, plotting her downfall with this mysterious Azura Lockwood, burned into Aisha's mind. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but Noah's frightened face kept her grounded. She reached for him, pulling him into a fierce hug, his small body trembling against hers. "You did the right thing telling me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're so brave, Noah." But bravery couldn't erase the fear. Aisha's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the past months. David's secrecy, his late-night calls, the locked laptop, the way he'd pushed for her to attend the gala. It all clicked into place, a blueprint of deceit she'd been too trusting to see. She glanced at the clock on the dashboard. They were due at the venue in 20 minutes. Her first instinct was to turn the car around, to flee from the trap Noah had just exposed. But something fiercer stirred within her, a resolve as unyielding as the steel in her designs. If David thought he could break her, he was wrong. "We're still going," she said, more to herself than to Noah, her voice hardening with determination. Noah's eyes widened. "But Mom, it's not safe." She squeezed his hand, her gaze steady. "I know, sweetheart, but I need to see this through. I need to know the truth." She didn't say the rest, that she needed to face David, to look into his eyes and see the man she'd loved for who he really was. Noah nodded, his trust in her absolute, even as fear lingered in his expression. Isha pulled back onto the road, her mind a whirlwind of strategy and survival. She needed proof, something concrete to expose David's plan before he could execute it. Her thoughts turned to Zoe, her best friend and a brilliant programmer who could hack into systems faster than Aisha could sketch a floor plan. If anyone could uncover evidence of David's betrayal, it was Zoe. Aisha's fingers fumbled for her phone, her heart racing as she dialed. "Zoe," she said when her friend answered, her voice urgent but low. "I need your help. It's David. He's trying to ruin me." As the car sped toward the gala, the city lights blurring into streaks of gold, Aisha felt the weight of Noah's warning settle into her bones. The night she'd thought would celebrate their shared success was now a battlefield. But she wasn't alone. Her son's courage had lit the way, and she would fight, not just for herself, but for the family she'd vowed to protect. The truth was close, and Aisha was ready to seize it, no matter the cost. The Atlanta skyline blurred past as Aisha's car sped toward the gala, the city's lights a kaleidoscope of urgency against the night. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, as Noah's whispered warning echoed in her mind. "It's a trap." The weight of her son's words pressed against her chest, each heartbeat a ticking clock. The gala was minutes away, a glittering stage where David planned to unveil his betrayal, framing Aisha for mistakes she hadn't made. Her emerald dress, once a symbol of hope for their fractured marriage, now felt like armor for a battle she hadn't chosen. Noah sat beside her, his small frame rigid, his eyes darting between his mother and the road ahead. Aisha's resolve hardened. She wouldn't let David's deceit destroy her, not with her son watching, not with their future at stake. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she dialed Zoe. The call connected on the second ring, Zoe's familiar voice cutting through the static. Aisha, what's wrong? You sound like you're running from something. Aisha's words spilled out, sharp and urgent, as she recounted Noah's revelation. David's plan, the mysterious Azura Lockwood, the fake documents designed to ruin her. Zoe, I need you to dig into David's system, now. Can you find proof of what he's doing? Silence hung for a moment. Then Zoe's voice sharpened with purpose. I'm on it. Give me his login details if you've got them. I'll tear his system apart. Aisha rattled off what she knew. Passwords David hadn't changed. Cloud accounts they'd once shared. Be careful, Zoe warned. If he's this calculated, he's covering his tracks. Aisha glanced at Noah, his face pale but resolute. Stay strong, buddy, she said softly, her voice a lifeline for them both. We're going to fix this. Noah nodded, clutching the edge of his seat, his trust in her a flicker of light in the storm. Aisha's mind raced, plotting her next move. She couldn't turn back now. Fleeing would only delay the inevitable. David expected her to walk into his trap, smiling and unsuspecting, a loyal wife playing her part. Instead, she'd go to the gala, eyes wide open, ready to unravel his scheme before it could unfold. But she needed evidence, something undeniable to expose him in front of the investors and partners who'd be watching. The venue loomed ahead, a sleek glass building aglow with chandeliers and ambition. Aisha pulled into the parking lot, her heart pounding as she scanned the sea of polished cars. David's black SUV was nowhere in sight. He'd insisted on arriving separately, a detail that now screamed of his deceit. She turned to Noah, her voice firm but gentle. I need you to stay with Aunt Sarah tonight. She'll be inside and I trust her to keep you safe. Noah's eyes widened, a flicker of protest crossing his face. But Mom, what if something happens to you? Aisha cupped his cheek, her thumb brushing away a tear he hadn't let fall. I'll be okay, she promised, though doubt gnawed at her. You've already saved me once tonight. I need you to be brave again. Inside, the gala buzzed with wealth and power. Men in tuxedos, women in glittering gowns, their laughter a sharp contrast to the storm raging within Aisha. She spotted Sarah, a trusted colleague from her firm, and guided Noah to her, whispering a quick explanation. Sarah's eyes widened, but she nodded, wrapping an arm around Noah. I've got him, she said. Aisha forced a smile, then turned toward the crowd, her senses heightened. David was somewhere in this room, his plan ticking like a time Mu-Biao system. Bomb. She scanned the faces, searching for his familiar blonde hair, his confident stride. Her stomach twisted at the thought of confronting him, but she pushed it down, focusing on the task at hand. Her phone buzzed in her clutch, a text from Zoe. Found something. Hidden folder labeled contingency. Fake financials blame you for discrepancies. Emails with Azura Lockwood too, sending you screenshots. Isha's breath caught as she opened the files Zoe sent. There they were, doctored spreadsheets showing inflated costs and errors traced to her name, designed to make her look incompetent, even fraudulent. Another file held emails between David and Azura Lockwood, their tone cold and calculating, discussing how to neutralize Aisha's influence and secure David's control of the company. The betrayal cut deeper than she'd imagined, each word a knife to her heart. But there was no time for pain. She forwarded the files to herself, her mind racing to formulate a plan. Zoe's next message was a lifeline. I can get into the Gala, Missouri presentation system remotely. If you're there, I can swap their slides with yours. Aisha's pulse quickened. Zoe could infiltrate David's presentation and replace his falsified data with the truth, exposing his lies in real time. It was a risky move, but Aisha was done playing the victim. She texted Zoe back, "Do it. I'm ready. Her fingers trembled as she hit send, the weight of her decision settling in. This was her moment to reclaim her life. She moved through the crowd, her eyes scanning for David. He stood near the stage, laughing with a group of investors, his charm effortless, oblivious to the storm she was about to unleash. Aisha's heart pounded, but her resolve was steel. She had the truth now, and she'd use it. Noah's warning had given her a chance to fight back, and she wouldn't let it slip away. The gala's lights glittered, but the real battle was about to begin. The gala's opulent glow felt like a cruel mockery as Aisha moved through the crowd, her emerald dress catching the light like a beacon in a sea of deception. Her phone buzzed again. Zoe's message, a pulse of hope. Presentation system accessed. Ready to swap slides when you give the signal. Aisha's heart raced, her fingers tightening around the phone as she wove past glittering gowns and clinking champagne glasses. Noah's warning, "Mom, he tricked you," still echoed, a fire fueling her resolve. David's plan to frame her for financial ruin was clear now, laid bare in the damning emails and falsified documents Zoe had uncovered. But Aisha wasn't the naive wife David expected. Tonight she'd turn his trap against him, exposing his betrayal before the investors and partners who filled the room with their self-assured laughter. She found a quiet corner near a towering floral arrangement, the scent of roses cloying as she dialed Zoe. "We need to move fast," Isha whispered, her voice low but steady. "David's about to present. Can you make sure the slides show everything? His emails, the fake financials, all of it?" Zoe's voice crackled with determination. "Already on it. I've built a sequence that'll play right after his intro. It'll look seamless, like it's part of his pitch. Just give me the go-ahead." Aisha's chest tightened with a mix of fear and exhilaration. "Do it," she said, her words a vow. "And Zoe, thank you." Zoe's laugh was sharp, fierce. "Girl, we're taking him down together." Aisha needed more than digital evidence to seal David's fate. Her thoughts turned to Thamtu Miller, a private investigator she'd met during a past project, his sharp mind and quiet tenacity, a perfect ally for this moment. She pulled up his number, her fingers trembling as she typed a quick message. "David's planning to frame me at the gala. I have proof, emails, fake documents. Can you help? At the venue now." Within seconds, Miller replied, "I'm nearby. I'll bring backup and collect evidence discreetly. Stay sharp." Relief flooded Aisha, but it was fleeting. The clock was ticking, and David was already moving toward the stage, his blonde hair catching the spotlight as he flashed a polished smile. Aisha's eyes scanned the room, landing on a woman who stood out like a warning flare. She was stunning, her sleek black dress hugging her frame, her dark hair pulled into an elegant chignon. She leaned close to David, her hand brushing his arm with a familiarity that made Aisha's stomach lurch. This had to be Azura Lockwood, the co-Azura Lockwood Noah had overheard, David's partner in betrayal. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and Azura Lockwood's lips curved into a knowing smile, as if she sensed Aisha's vulnerability. But Aisha wasn't vulnerable, not anymore. She returned the gaze, her own eyes blazing with defiance, a silent promise that Azura Lockwood's victory lap would be short-lived. Aisha slipped her phone into her clutch and moved toward the stage, her steps deliberate, her heart a drumbeat of purpose. She needed to be close when the truth unfolded, ready to step into the light if the moment demanded it. Zoe's plan was in motion, but Aisha had to ensure every detail was perfect. She caught Sarah's eye across the room, where she stood with Noah, his small hand clutching hers. Aisha gave a subtle nod, reassuring her son she was in control, even as her pulse thundered. Noah's courage had brought her this far. Now it was her turn to fight. She found a spot near the front, blending into the crowd as David took the stage. His voice boomed through the microphone, smooth and confident, welcoming the guests to the gala that would mark a new era for his company. Aisha's skin prickled as he mentioned her, his words dripping with false pride. "My wife Aisha has been instrumental in this project's success." The crowd applauded, oblivious to the lie, but Aisha's jaw clenched. She glanced at her phone, texting Zoe one word: "Now." Backstage, Zoe's fingers flew across her laptop, her screen glowing with the hacked presentation system. She'd crafted a devastating reveal, David's opening slides would transition into a cascade of evidence. Emails plotting Aisha's downfall, forged financials pinning errors on her, and a timeline showing David's plan to seize control of the company. The slides were designed to look like part of his pitch, a trap he'd walk into blindly. Aisha's breath hitched as she imagined the moment, David's face crumpling as his lies were laid bare. The crowd's gasps replacing their applause. Tom Miller slipped into the room, his gray suit unassuming, but his eyes sharp, scanning the crowd like a hawk. He nodded subtly at Aisha, his presence a quiet assurance that justice was close. Two of his associates, dressed as waitstaff, moved through the room, their phones discreetly recording, gathering evidence to ensure David and Azura Lockwood couldn't slip away. Aisha's heart pounded, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was power. She'd spent years building a life with David, trusting him, loving him. Now she'd dismantle his lies with the same precision she brought to her architectural designs. Azura Lockwood stood near David, her posture relaxed, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. She thought she'd won, that Aisha was just a pawn in their game. But Aisha was no pawn. She was a queen, and this board was hers to command. As David clicked to the next slide, oblivious to the storm about to break, Aisha's lips curved into a faint, determined smile. The counterstrike was ready. The truth was her weapon, and tonight it would cut deep. The gala's chandeliers cast a golden glow over the crowd, their murmurs a low hum beneath David's polished voice as he stood center stage, commanding the room with the ease of a man who believed himself untouchable. Aisha stood near the front, her emerald dress catching the light, her heart a war drum pounding in her chest. David's smile was a blade, sharp and false, as he spoke of his company's groundbreaking project, crediting Aisha's architectural designs with a warmth that made her skin crawl. She knew the truth. His words were a prelude to betrayal, a setup to frame her for financial ruin. But tonight, the stage was hers. Zoe's hacked presentation was primed. Tam Miller and his team lurked in the shadows, and Noah's warning burned in her mind. "Mom, he tricked you." Aisha's fingers tightened around her clutch, her resolve as unyielding as steel. David clicked to the next slide, his voice rising with confidence. "This project represents innovation, trust, and partnership," he said, his eyes flicking toward Aisha with a glint of something dark. Triumph, perhaps, or malice. The crowd applauded, investors nodding, their champagne flutes gleaming. Aisha's pulse thundered, her gaze locked on the massive screen behind him. This was the moment. She caught Zoe's eye across the room, her friend's subtle nod a signal that the trap was set. Aisha's lips pressed into a thin line, her breath shallow as David clicked again, expecting his falsified financials to paint her as the scapegoat. Instead, the screen flared with an email. David's own words, stark and damning. "Aisha won't see it coming. The investors will turn on her, and I'll take control." The crowd's murmurs faltered, replaced by a ripple of confusion. David's smile froze, his hand hovering over the clicker as another slide appeared. A forged spreadsheet, errors highlighted in red, all traced to Aisha's name. But the next slide revealed the truth. Metadata showing David's edits, timestamps proving he doctored the files. Gasps rose from the audience, heads turning, whispers spreading like wildfire. Aisha's heart surged with a fierce electric thrill. She'd caught him. David's face drained of color, his eyes darting to the screen as he stabbed at the clicker, desperate to stop the cascade. But Zoe's work was relentless. Another email flashed up, this one to Azura Lockwood. "Once Aisha's out, the company's mine. She's too trusting." Azura Lockwood, standing near the stage in her sleek black dress, stiffened, her confident smirk vanishing. The crowd's shock turned to outrage, investors shifting uncomfortably as the truth unfolded. David's voice cracked as he stammered, "This is a mistake. Someone's hacked the system." But his words drowned in the sea of murmurs, his credibility crumbling with each new slide. Aisha stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her presence commanding silence. The crowd parted, eyes on her, as she climbed the stage steps with a grace that belied the storm inside. David turned, his face a mask of panic, but she didn't flinch. "No mistake, David," she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the room like a blade. "You planned to ruin me, to take everything I built and claim it for yourself. But you underestimated me and our son." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle, her gaze sweeping the crowd. "Noah overheard your plan. He warned me, and I found the proof." She gestured to the screen, now frozen on a damning email chain between David and Azura Lockwood. Their scheme laid bare. "These are your words, David. Your lies. You forged documents to frame me for financial errors, to destroy my reputation and steal control of the company I helped you build." Her voice trembled with controlled fury, each word a hammer striking the final nails into his facade. The crowd was riveted, some clutching their drinks, others whispering furiously. Azura Lockwood tried to slip toward the exit, but Tom Two Miller's associates, disguised as waitstaff, blocked her path, their faces impassive but firm. David's mouth opened, then closed, his hands shaking as he gripped the podium. "Aisha, you don't understand," he began, but she cut him off. "I understand perfectly. You betrayed me, our family, our son." Her voice broke on the last word, but she straightened, her eyes blazing. "You thought I'd stay silent, that I'd let you win, but I'm done being your pawn." The crowd erupted in murmurs, some nodding in support, others glaring at David with newfound disgust. Tom Two Miller stepped forward, his gray suit blending into the shadows until he reached the stage. "David Reynolds, Azura Lockwood Nguyen," he said, his voice calm but authoritative. "We have evidence of fraud, conspiracy, and attempted defamation. You're coming with us." His associates moved swiftly, one guiding Azura Lockwood from the room as she protested, her composure shattered. David lunged for the clicker one last time, as if he could erase the truth. But Miller's hand on his arm stopped him cold. The crowd watched, stunned, as David was led away, his head bowed, his empire in ruins. Aisha turned to the audience, her chest heaving, but her voice steady. "I built this project with honesty and dedication. I won't let anyone take that from me." Applause broke out, tentative at first, then thunderous, a wave of support that lifted her. She stepped off the stage, her eyes finding Noah in the crowd, his small face lit with pride and relief. He broke free from Sarah's grasp and ran to her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "You did it, Mom," he whispered, tears in his eyes. Aisha knelt, pulling him close, her own tears falling as she held her son, the boy who'd saved her. The stage was shattered, David's lies exposed, and Aisha stood tall in the wreckage, her strength a beacon in the chaos. But the night wasn't over. The fallout was just beginning, and Aisha knew the road ahead would test her even further. For now, though, she held Noah, their bond unbreakable, ready to face whatever came next. The gala's glittering lights had faded, but the fallout from that night burned bright in Atlanta's headlines. Aisha Williams stood at the center of a media storm, her face splashed across newsstands and social media. Architect exposes husband's corporate conspiracy. The betrayal that had unfolded on that stage, David's plot to frame her, undone by Noah's whispered warning and Zoe's digital wizardry, had become the city's obsession. Aisha sat in her modest living room, the morning sun filtering through the curtains, a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. Noah was upstairs, his laughter faint as he played with a new set of building blocks, a gift from Zoe. The world outside roared with judgment, but here in their quiet sanctuary, Aisha was piecing herself back together, brick by brick. The days after the gala were a blur of chaos. Reporters camped outside her home, their cameras flashing like vultures circling. Aisha shielded Noah, her arm around his small shoulders as they navigated the frenzy, her voice calm but firm when she declined interviews. She wasn't ready to bare her soul to the world, not yet. The betrayal cut too deep. David's lies a wound that still bled. But the evidence, meticulously gathered by Tom Two Miller and his team, was ironclad. David and Azura Lockwood faced charges of fraud, conspiracy, and defamation, their polished facades stripped away in court filings that dominated the news. Aisha watched the coverage with a mix of vindication and sorrow, the man she'd loved reduced to a cautionary tale. The legal battle was grueling. Aisha sat through depositions, her jaw tight as David's lawyers tried to twist the narrative, painting her as a scorned wife out for revenge. But Zoe's screenshots, Miller's recordings, and Noah's tearful testimony about overhearing his father's plan were undeniable. The judge's gavel fell like a hammer, sealing David's fate. A trial date set, assets frozen, his company teetering on collapse. Azura Lockwood, too, faced justice, her role as David's accomplice exposed in damning detail. Aisha felt no joy in their downfall, only a hollow relief. She'd won, but the cost was a marriage shattered, a trust broken beyond repair. Rebuilding her reputation was a different kind of fight. The investors who'd applauded David's lies at the gala now sought Aisha's expertise, their apologies laced with admiration. She took control of the project she'd designed, steering it from the ashes of David's betrayal to a triumph of her own. Her firm buzzed with new contracts, her eco-friendly designs drawing praise from industry leaders. Aisha walked into boardrooms with her head high, her sketches bold and unapologetic, proving she was more than the scandal's headline. The community rallied around her, women's groups and local entrepreneurs hailing her as a symbol of resilience. Yet late at night, when the world was quiet, Aisha wrestled with the weight of it all, the public's gaze, the whispers, the fear that she'd never fully escape David's shadow. Noah was her anchor. Her 8-year-old son, whose courage had sparked this reckoning, carried his own scars. He'd wake from nightmares, calling for her, his small voice trembling as he asked if Dad would come back. Aisha held him close, her heart aching as she explained that David had made choices that hurt them, but they were safe now together. She enrolled Noah in art therapy, where he drew vibrant cities of towering buildings, a reflection of his mother's dreams. They spent evenings rebuilding their bond, baking cookies in their cozy kitchen or stargazing in the backyard. Noah's head on her shoulder as he named constellations. "You're my hero, Mom," he'd whisper, and Aisha's eyes would sting, her love for him a fierce, unshakable force. Zoe remained her rock, her laughter and fierce loyalty a balm for Aisha's wounds. Over late-night wine, they dissected the past, Zoe's sharp wit cutting through the pain. "You took him down like a boss," she'd say, raising her glass, and Aisha would smile, the weight lifting just a little. Tom to Miller, too, stayed in touch, his quiet check-ins a reminder that she hadn't fought alone. The community's support grew, from colleagues offering pro bono legal advice to neighbors dropping off casseroles. Their kindness a thread stitching Aisha's life back together. She began to heal, slowly, deliberately. Aisha took up running, her sneakers pounding the pavement at dawn, each step a reclaiming of her strength. She redesigned her home office, replacing David's old desk with a sleek one of her own, her sketches pinned to the walls like promises. She didn't rush into new love, her heart wasn't ready, but she found joy in small moments. Noah's laughter, Zoe's quips, the thrill of a new project taking shape. The pain of David's betrayal lingered, a bruise that ached when touched, but it no longer defined her. She was Aisha Williams, architect, mother, survivor, and she was enough. The company thrived under her leadership, and the project David tried to steal is now a beacon of innovation. At its unveiling, Aisha stood before a crowd. Noah by her side, her voice steady as she spoke of resilience and vision. The applause was deafening, a stark contrast to the gala's shocked silence. She looked at Noah, his eyes bright with pride, and felt a spark of hope. The future wasn't without challenges. The trial loomed, the media still hovered. But Aisha was ready. She'd faced the worst and emerged stronger, her son's courage and her own tenacity lighting the way. The scars remained, but so did her resolve, a foundation no one could break. The Atlanta skyline gleamed under a crisp morning sun, its steel spires a testament to Aisha Williams' resilience. 5 years had passed since that fateful gala, where Noah's whispered warning, "Mom, he tricked you," had unraveled David's cruel plan and set Aisha on a path of rebirth. Now at 33, she stood in her office atop a sleek, eco-friendly tower she'd designed, her name etched on the glass door. Aisha Williams, CEO, Horizon Designs. Her wavy hair still cascading and defiant, caught the light as she reviewed blueprints, her fingers tracing lines that spoke of dreams rebuilt from ashes. The scars of betrayal lingered, but they were faint now, overshadowed by a life she'd forged with grit and love. Noah, now 13, bounded into the room, his grin wide, a sketchbook tucked under his arm. Their bond, unbreakable, was the heartbeat of her story. The years since the gala had been a crucible. David's trial had dominated headlines. His and Azura Lockwood's convictions for fraud and conspiracy, a public reckoning that left Aisha both vindicated and drained. She'd faced the courtroom with steely resolve, her testimony unflinching as she laid bare his plot to frame her. The media frenzy had tested her, cameras flashing as she shielded Noah from their glare. But she'd emerged stronger, her voice steady in interviews where she spoke not of victimhood, but of survival. "I'm not defined by what was done to me," she told a packed press conference, her eyes fierce. "I'm defined by what I've built." The crowd had roared, and Aisha felt the weight of their support, a tide lifting her forward. Her company, Horizon Designs, had soared. The project David tried to steal became a cornerstone of her success, its innovative eco-structures earning awards and drawing clients from across the globe. Aisha led with the same passion she'd once poured into her marriage, but now it was untainted by doubt, her vision clear. Her office buzzed with young architects, their sketches pinned to walls, inspired by her mantra, "Build boldly, love fiercely." She mentored women of color, sharing her story at conferences, her words a beacon for those navigating their own battles. "Trust your instincts," she'd say, her voice warm but firm. "They'll save you when nothing else can." The applause was thunderous, but it was Noah's proud smile in the audience that mattered most. Noah had grown into a thoughtful teenager, his sensitivity honed by the trials they'd faced. He'd traded his toy cars for pencils, sketching fantastical cities that mirrored Aisha's designs. Art therapy had helped him heal, but it was their evenings together, cooking, laughing, or debating superheroes, that rebuilt his trust in the world. Aisha watched him flourish, her heart swelling at his resilience. "You're my North Star," she'd tell him, ruffling his hair, and he'd roll his eyes but grin, their bond a fortress against the past. Noah's courage that night at the gala remained her touchstone, a reminder that even in darkness, truth could spark a revolution. Aisha hadn't sought love again, not yet. The wound David left was too deep, and she'd learned happiness didn't require a partner. She found joy in her work, her son, her friendships. Zoe, ever her fiercest ally, was a constant, her tech skills now running Horizon's smart building systems, her laughter a balm over coffee dates. Tam2 Miller sent occasional texts, his quiet support a reminder of the allies who'd stood by her. Aisha ran at dawn, her sneakers pounding Atlanta's trails, each step a declaration of her freedom. She redesigned her home, painting walls in vibrant hues, a canvas for the life she'd reclaimed. The lessons of those years were etched into her soul. Love, she'd learned, wasn't possession or sacrifice. It was trust, respect, and the courage to walk away when those were broken. David's betrayal had taught her to listen to her instincts, to see the cracks before they became chasms. "Pain carves the path to strength," she wrote in a journal she shared with Noah, her words a map for them both. She'd learned to embrace her voice, to stand tall in boardrooms and courtrooms, unafraid of the spotlight. Most of all, she'd learned that happiness was hers to build, not someone else's to grant. On a quiet evening, Aisha and Noah stood on their balcony, the city sprawling below like a canvas of possibility. He was taller now, his voice deeper, but his eyes still held the same spark that had saved her. "Mom, you think we're okay now?" he asked, leaning against the railing. Aisha pulled him close, her heart full. "More than okay," she said, her voice steady. "We're unstoppable." Noah laughed, and they watched the sunset, its golden light a promise of new dawns. Aisha's final message wasn't just for her. It was for every woman who'd faced betrayal, who'd doubted her worth. She shared it at a women's summit, her voice ringing clear. "You are enough. Fight for yourself. Trust your truth, and never let anyone dim your light." The crowd rose, their applause a wave of solidarity. Aisha looked at Noah in the front row, his sketchbook open to a drawing of a towering building, her name on it. The past had tested her, but the future was hers, built on a foundation of courage, love, and a boy who dared to speak. As the sun sets on Aisha and Noah's journey in Mom, He Tricked You, their story leaves us with a powerful truth. Courage and love can triumph over betrayal. Aisha's resilience and Noah's bravery inspire us to trust our instincts, stand tall against deception, and rebuild from the ashes of hardship. This tale reminds us that our strength lies in the bonds we cherish and the truths we dare to speak. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What moved you most about Aisha's fight or Noah's courage? Share in the comments where you're listening from and how this story touched you. Thank you for joining me on this emotional ride. Your support means the world. Until next time, keep believing in your own power to rise. See you soon.